Joseph in Egypt.
This is the story of Joseph of Canaan, who was stolen out of his homeland and was sold to Potiphar, a captain in the army of Pharaoh, ruler of Egypt. Now Joseph was a young man, as wise as he was handsome, for God was with him, and Potiphar was pleased with Joseph and put him in charge of his household. But Potiphar's wife fell in love with Joseph, and when he would have nothing to do with her, she grew angry and went to Potiphar, saying,
"Your slave has insulted me. Punish him."
And Potiphar believed his wife, and Joseph was arrested and thrown into prison. And time passed, and it seemed that God had turned his face away from Joseph, but it was not so. For one day, Pharaoh's chief steward was brought in as a prisoner because he had done some wrong. And this man became friends with Joseph, and one morning he said to him,
"I had a dream last night, Joseph, and it worries me.
Why?
Because I can't understand it. In Pharaoh's court, there were magicians who could have told me what it meant, but here...
Perhaps I can help you. Tell me your dream.
Well, I dreamt I was a vine, with 3 branches laden with grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I squeezed the grapes into the cup and gave it to Pharaoh. Joseph, what do you make of it?"
The 3 branches mean that in 3 days, Pharaoh will forgive you and set you free.
And it was so. In 3 days the steward was set free and restored to his place in the palace. Joseph remained in prison. Then one night, years later, Pharaoh himself was troubled by dreams, and his magicians were not able to explain them. Then the steward remembered Joseph, and he told Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said,
"Bring the Hebrew slave before me."
And Joseph was brought forth out of prison, and Pharaoh said,
"Hear my dream, and for your life, tell me what it means."
By myself I cannot, but God will give Pharaoh the answer.
We will see. This was my dream. I was standing on the banks of a river, and 7 fat cows came up and fed on the grass. Then 7 thin cows came after them and fell on the fat cows and ate them up. Later, I had another dream. I saw 7 full ears of corn on one stalk, and on another stalk, 7 thin ears. And the thin ears swallowed up the good ones. Well, Joseph?
God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do.
And what is that?
The 7 fat cows and the 7 full ears of corn mean that 7 years of plenty are coming to Egypt. But the thin cows and the thin ears of corn mean that 7 years of famine will follow the years of plenty. In that time the crops will fail, and many will die of hunger, unless something is done to save them.
How? What can be done?
Let Pharaoh see to it that in the years of plenty, a 5th part of all the food that grows in Egypt is set aside under your great seal. And let the food be sold to all who need it when the lean years come.
And Pharaoh gave thought to the words of Joseph, and believed them. And he said,
Since God has shown you all this, you shall see it is done as you say. Behold, I give you power over all the land of Egypt, second only to mine.
And Joseph went out over Egypt, and he gathered up a 5th part of all the grain that grew in the next 7 years, and stored it up in every city. And then the lean years came, and the people hungered. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and in Egypt there was bread. but it was not so in the countries nearby. Because of the crop failure, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to buy grain. Joseph recognized them. The reunion was an event of rejoicing as Joseph forgave them, saying,
"It was God who sent me ahead of you to Egypt to save men's lives."
And Pharaoh rewarded Joseph by welcoming his family to live in Egypt and prosper. And God promised Jacob, Joseph's father, in a vision,
"Do not be afraid to go to Egypt. I will make you a great nation.